Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for taking your time to sit with us. We really appreciate it. Could you introduce yourself a little bit,
Sure,
brother?
Thank you for inviting us. My name is Mahad Qamar. I was born in Pakistan and I was raised in the United States, and that's also where I met my wife, and we got married over there. And we both studied in the Bayyinah Institute, and after we graduated from the program in the third year, we came to Malaysia, and currently we're studying in the International Islamic University of Malaysia.
Yes.
My name is Safiyah Ravat. I was born in Canada, and I got also roots in South Africa and India. But like Mahad, I grew up in the U.S., and we are currently at this university studying Fiqh and Usul and Fiqh, and inshallah we'll be graduating in just a couple of months.
Inshallah. That's great.
And we have one baby boy.
MashaAllah.
One baby boy, mashallah.
Listen. So can we get a little information about Bayyinah? Like what is it aiming for? What are some projects or programs going on at Bayyinah, just in general? And why is it so important of a project, especially in a place like USA? And how did you first hear about Bayyinah? Can you talk a little bit?
So how we first heard about Bayyinah, I think, was that Ustad Noman probably just visited our city, and we probably attended some classes that he was doing over there. And we had heard about that he had started the 9-month-long Arabic program. So that was something we were both interested in. Once we had gotten married, we were planning on either traveling to Egypt or somewhere in the Muslim world to learn the Arabic language. So that's one thing that Bayyinah offers, the Arabic language courses they have, and they have on-site full-time as well as part-time studies. So I think that's something that's very crucial for the Muslim Ummah in general, not just in the US, but specifically when you're looking at the US, you have a lot of young people coming to these programs. And we were able to actually teach over there for about a month or so. And while we were there, a lot of young people were there, but we also had a mix of working professionals, retired individuals. We had a nice mix of people. But the common thing that you see with all these students coming from all over, and a lot of people that you meet that have gone to Bayyinah programs or taking classes, they appreciate how accessible the Qur'an has become to them, or how Bayyinah tries to attempt to make the Qur'an much more accessible and enjoyable to study. And I think that's one of the most crucial things that the Muslim Ummah needs to focus on, that making the Qur'an easy and accessible so that Muslim youth as well as working professionals and those individuals that have very busy lives and just the day-to-day, they're able to access the Qur'an and be able to really enjoy what they're doing.
Yeah. Do you have anything to say, sister?
I think what's interesting about Bayyinah, looking back in the U.S. particularly, but also in other countries, Bayyinah seems to be one spark that has really incited people to learn Arabic.
Yeah, sure.
So previous to this, I feel like we all thought it was an unattainable goal.
Yes.
Even me, myself, growing up, you take a few classes of Arabic here and there, you learn kitab and qalam and a few different words here and there, but you really felt like you weren't getting anywhere with it.
Yes.
And so it just seemed like I'm just going to have to look at the Quran through English, and that's the only choice I have.
Yes.
But Ustad Noman found a way to make Arabic understandable to just the mediocre, regular people. And I think that was an amazing thing that they've done. And ever since we've been there, we've been telling people from all over, this is one of the most effective ways in teaching, because it's not only about we're learning Arabic, it's that they found a method of teaching, a method of education that really works for people, that others have not worked very well in the past. They've worked for certain people who are really into languages, who are good at studying, who go overseas to study, but this was one of the first approaches I've seen that everyone feels like, oh, I can learn Arabic too, I can get connected to the Quran as well.
Yes, so it's great, mashallah. So I really want to ask you, how and when did your journey started with the Quran? Did it start with Bayyinah, or did you do any work before it to get closer to Quran?
For myself, I remember being like the typical Pakistani child who their parents will put them into a class to basically finish the recitation of the Qur'an from beginning to end. So that's very it's a very normal thing in the Pakistani culture to do that. So for myself, that's what my relationship with the Qur'an was in my early years as a child. That I remember around the age of maybe 10 or 11, finishing the recitation of the Qur'an and then having like a party, a celebration for the fact that I finished it. But then from that age until like my late teenage years, I didn't have any relationship with the Qur'an. So I felt like a lot of my friends, a lot of the individuals who I was around were also had similar situations like that, where at the early age, kids are taken to Qur'an classes, but once after they finish that, it's really, they don't have too much of a strong connection. And that's how I felt. Until, I would say I think I had just recently graduated high school, so finished my 12th grade, and after that there was a class coming in town for tajweed and recitation of the Qur'an. And I still remember the teacher, he was reciting in a video, and I was just saying like, wow, it's incredible. I never heard something so beautiful. So what really inspired me to kind of start my journey with the Qur'an was actually the recitation of the Qur'an. That it really, it blew me away. And actually if you look at, the stories of, from the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, so many people just by hearing the Qur'an, the recitation of the Qur'an, they accepted Islam. And like when we hear it, we might not understand the full meaning, but we hear the beauty of it. And that's what kind of, that kind of pulled me towards the Qur'an the second time around. So when I started reciting it and learning how to recite it, after unlocking the beauty and trying to just read it beautifully, the next step was, okay, I'm reading something, but what does it mean? That I know how to read it, I'm trying to learn how to perfect the recitation of it, but what am I actually reading? What does it mean? Because the primary function of it is what? ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. That is the book in which there is no doubt. It's guidance for those who have consciousness of Allah, those who have taqwa of Allah. So for us to unlock the guidance, we have to really understand the meaning behind it. So that's when we, basically around that time, we had gotten married and we had decided that we're definitely going to go start studying Arabic somewhere, but the question was just where. And then alhamdulillah we ended up at Veena, and then we studied over there, and I would say that really was one of the biggest blessings in our lives, to be able to study Arabic for full time, for the amount of time we did. Now alhamdulillah that led us to coming over here to this Islamic university, and we're studying over here, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Anything to add, sister?
My journey with the Qur'an, it was sort of minimal in my childhood years, teenage years. It's similar to most kids growing up in the US, where we just go to Sunday school, which means once a week we learn Islam, just limited to once a week. But in my late teen years, I was struck by something. It was during Tarawih prayer, where we were listening to the Qur'an, and as I was listening to the Qur'an, I could sense that I lived in an area where there was a lot of Arabs. So the people in my masjid, they seemed so moved by what was being said, even to the point of crying. And there I am in prayer, like every year before in Tarawih, going for 30 days, not understanding a single thing that's being said, trying my best to just keep khushu, but how can you keep khushu for so long when you have no idea what you're listening to? I think at that point is when something was put into my heart, and I said, I want to be able to be affected by the Qur'an like that person is affected. And that is where my Qur'an journey started, specifically the Arabic journey, because I realized, yes, I can read the translation, but I won't feel that same thing until I know what Allah is saying to me directly, right? In the language He has revealed the Qur'an in. And so before we went to Bayyinah, we did do a couple trial and errors. I went to our university Arabic class. In my university, I took Arabic classes, but it was sort of like modern standard Arabic. It wasn't Quranic Arabic, so I was learning like كيف حالك and أنا بخير, just conversational Arabic. So it was helping a little, but not getting me very far. We took a couple classes at the masjid, but the problem is these are usually once a week, and by the time you go to class next week, you've sort of forgotten half of what you learned, and then there's a break for a couple months, and everything is lost. And so, we did try a few other ways to learn Arabic, but we realized the only way to sometimes learn a language is to be immersed in it, and that's why we went the path of finding something that was very full-time, and that's where Bayyinah came in the picture.
Great. So how about the difficulties you faced when studying the Quran? Like, and also what technique did you follow in studying the Quran? Because there are a lot of young people who want to study the Quran, but they don't really know where to start and which technique they should use, like that. So do you have any ideas about it?
So some of the difficulties I think everyone who faces when trying to learn a new language is just being kind of feeling overwhelmed that you're getting into this ocean that you're not ready to kind of get into yet. So it's just realizing that it's a journey, that once you start learning the language or once you start trying to understand the Qur'an, it's not something that you can just magically pick up over a couple of nights or a couple of days or even a couple of months. It's something that's really a lifelong journey. And your goal shouldn't be, you know what, I have to understand the Arabic language perfectly. I have to understand everything on the Qur'an. Your goal should be that you're trying to seek the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That if you end up trying to learn Arabic your entire life and you don't end up actually, you know, becoming a master like you wanted to of the Arabic language or a master of tafsir like you wanted to, the more important thing is that doing it for the right reason, for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, trying to earn His happiness, and just keeping constant in that effort. That's one thing that as Safiya mentioned, that when we were taking classes on a weekly basis in our communities for I think maybe a year or so, or maybe even longer than a year, it was just, it's like the consistency was kind of there because there was a once a week class, but it was just that it wasn't really meeting the goal that we were looking at. So the goal was what? Trying to understand the Qur'an itself. And a lot of the Muslims, I mean, if you ask the majority of Muslims why are they studying Arabic, they'll say, I want to study Arabic, or I'm studying Arabic because I want to learn the Qur'an. But the problem is that if we look at actually the type of Arabic we're studying in certain places, it'll be more geared towards getting that person used to speaking the Arabic language. So for example, graduates from certain institutions, they will use their books to teach the Arabic. But if you look at their books, like, you know, the books are saying like the students going to the immigration office, the students going to the post office, the students going over there. Now, some words, yes, you might have them used in the Qur'an as well, but realize that if you streamline that and you actually go to a system that gives you kind of more towards your goals and objectives, it'll make more sense for you in the long run. So for those people that want to learn the Arabic language and slowly start developing their Quranic studies, that's also fine as well. I mean, that's kind of the more, you would say like the more scholarly approach, that you're learning the entire language instead of just saying, I'm going to focus only on the Qur'an. But realistically, if you look at people today with work lives, school lives, study lives, it makes more sense for those people that they don't have time to master an entire language. Rather, they want certain keys to be able to open up the Qur'an for them so they can understand that better. So for us, I mean, we had tried different approaches, and I think we both agreed that when it came to a more full-time, a more immersive environment, it was much more beneficial for us. And we found that in Bayyinah, and we found that when we were there for the 9-month program, and we were able to day in and day out, 5 days a week, studying Qur'an, studying Arabic, it was something that it made the journey much more easier, opposed to doing it once a week.
So what do you recommend for people who don't have the opportunity to go to programs like that? And you also, sister, what are your recommendations for young people who want to start their journey, but not in that kind of intense programs?
That's the issue. I mean, the majority of people, realistically, they're not able to take time off and do a full-time program. So rather, what I honestly suggest is trying to do something that's part-time, but making sure it's consistent, more than even once a week. Because think about it, if you try to learn any language or try to learn any skill and you're only practicing it once a week, it becomes very difficult to master that. I even met a Turkish brother, mashallah, that was in our class this year, and he went to Egypt, and he said that he didn't even take any classes because he couldn't afford any of the classes. He only just stayed with Arab people over there, and he learned the Arabic language, and he speaks Arabic very well. So it's being consistent, that even though he wasn't taking classes, he was just exposed to it a lot. So I would say, honestly, there are part-time programs that Veena and different institutions offer, and I feel like I'm a little bit biased because I'll keep saying maybe try out the Veena program because of the methodology and how they teach, because their focus is to get you to the Quranic Arabic as fast as possible. opposed to maybe other institutions, their focus would be, to kind of just introduce the language of Arabic to you. But that's kind of my recommendation. That Veena does have a part-time program, an online program. That's a recommendation. Other than that, doing local classes. But I would also recommend what was most beneficial, I think, to our studies was that Ustad Oman told us within the first couple of months that if you're basically the program is not too difficult for you, hire a private teacher. That basically finding a teacher that will sit with you either one-on-one or two-on-one, three-on-one, that is many, many more times more beneficial for a student than just constantly coming to a class that has 40 students and you're one of 40. What you need to do is be able to sit with the teacher and really get into a text or really be able to speak back and forth or ask questions and benefit from a teacher in a smaller environment. That's something that I would say that will really help the student. But the number one tip is just consistency. Because if it happens that say you study Arabic maybe 3 days a week, and then the next week you don't study at all, and the next week you study for 2 days, and the next week you don't study at all, it's just having a teacher that can hold you accountable, as well as making sure it's a regular habit. That even if it's every other day or on a daily basis, spending 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, just constantly being immersed in the language. So that's something that I would recommend, inshallah.
Do you have anything to add, sister?
I just have one other program to recommend in addition to Bayyinah. Bayyinah has their full-time. Another program that I've heard about that has a Quranic stream of teaching is the Qasid, Jordan. So I have friends who have graduated from there, and mashallah, like their Arabic, they're able to enroll in a university. For example, this university, we have some students from Qasid who their Arabic is at a good level. And then in terms of another part-time program is something online called Studio Rabia. That is also a program that we benefited from while we were in Bayyinah. And it's basically, it's just having a part-time, a part-time Skype tutor. And so this organization finds you tutors from Egypt. Generally, they've graduated and they have a diploma in Arabic. Some have diploma in Quranic Arabic. Some have degrees all the way in, Sharia and Qur'an and things like that. And so they pair you with these teachers, and you have one-on-one sessions with them, and they customize your curriculum based on what you want. So you can say, I just want a Quranic curriculum, so they can customize it for you. You've got your own personal private Arabic teacher.
Do they have only one language, or do we get to choose the language?
They generally themselves, the teachers, only speak Arabic, right? So I understand there's probably some difficulty there, but eventually, some people say that's not a very good method, but for us it ended up working. That he would maybe show us a picture, and through that we'd learn, or
depending on the
through
students,
context and things like that. And I'm sure the teachers, some of them perhaps know other languages as well. But that is just another method that we've seen that was effective and was helpful for us as well.
I think a good way of going about that is that you study Arabic in that most intense manner you can, in terms of trying to increase your vocabulary and your grammar and your understanding of the language. Do that before you go to a one-on-one private teacher. So try to do local classes, try to sit with local scholars, and then go to a teacher that maybe knows only Arabic. That could be a way of going about it. But personally, what I recommended to a lot of my own friends was that taking either Arabic with Husna, or taking even Veena Access, which is the part-time program. And once you've gone through a couple of sessions of that, and the language is starting to make sense in terms of its foundations, then go and take a one-on-one tutor. And then that will really kind of boost you, opposed to just showing up to this one-on-one teacher. You don't understand him, he doesn't understand you, and it's more difficult that way. So it's kind of have a little bit of background in Arabic before you get that one-on-one teacher online, through an online tutor. But in terms of getting a teacher locally, I would definitely recommend, especially if you guys are youth in Turkey and you have your imams who also can speak Turkish and they can teach you the language, that might be one of the easiest ways for you to do it. It just depends on who's around your locality, how many kind of institutions, educational institutions there are.
So in relation to that, I have a really crucial question, does it take Arabic to appreciate the beauty of the Quran? and ponder upon it, like because we have also the people that are in a certain age in their lives, like a housewife or even don't really do any work in learning languages or any other stuff to do these kinds of stuff. So what are your recommendations? Does it take Arabic to appreciate the beauty of the Quran?
So if the question is like, if it takes the Arabic language to be able to ponder over it, you can ponder you can ponder over the Quran in your own language and your own thoughts. But like for example, if you look at so many Muslims, so many non-Muslims accept Islam because they read a translation of the Qur'an. And it's because the guidance was accessible. The guidance is accessible in any language. You can translate the message in any language you want. As long as the meaning is kind of coming through, then the guidance is still accessible. But what the Arabic language does, once you've learned that, it opens up a depth of beauty of the Qur'an that's only available in that language. So after you learn the Arabic language, then you compare it to like a translation. You look at the translation, you're like, the translation is good, but it sounds and looks so much better in the Arabic. It's just so much more like I was trying to think of an example for this, but it's like maybe if you see a picture of like a very beautiful mountain range or something, and it's in gray. Versus if you learn the Arabic language, it's like you walk inside of the picture and you're actually inside, and like the mountains, like you see the colors, the fresh breeze, you can smell it, and you have that tranquility. So it's like you can get the idea from it, or you can truly, like really fully experience it. And I mean that's not even the best analogy for it, but it's something that, regardless of your age or your time or your commitment, taking steps towards learning the Quran, or just even spending, 5-10 minutes a day with the Qur'an, making that a habit. That's the first step for the average person. That before they start thinking about going and starting an Arabic journey, all these things, just developing a basic relationship with the Qur'an, spending at least 5 to 10 minutes a day, and you can increase from there. But the most important thing is making it a habit. That not a day goes by except that I pick up the Qur'an, I read the Arabic, I read the translation, regardless of how poor my recitation is, or regardless of whatever my reasons are. But I will sit down and I will read the Qur'an and I will see, what is Allah trying to teach me? How can I get guidance from this book? That's one of the most important things to do from that.
I think he said mostly all of it. I will just add one thing, is that prior to learning Arabic, I always found it really difficult to memorize the Quran, because of course you're memorizing something in a language you don't understand. So you're literally just like, you're memorizing in your head what is gibberish. You don't understand it. Throughout these 4 years here studying in Malaysia, we've had to memorize quite a few things. This semester, for example, I have to memorize one juz of Surah Al-Baqarah. And with my old mindset, I came into this semester thinking, oh, this is going to be extremely difficult. I know I'm so bad at memorization. But what's been amazing is all of a sudden, now that Arabic has been unlocked to me, I'm actually reading a story, and I'm just memorizing the story because I understand what I'm memorizing. And I've just been shocked every time I sit there to memorize, because it's become so much easier and so much more meaningful. So the Arabic language has at least helped me definitely in terms of that hifz al-Qur'an. Memorizing something you don't understand is much more difficult than, of course, memorizing something you understand and realizing as you're memorizing, oh, this happened and that happened, and oh, and then this happened, and you're just like, you're enjoying the story as you're reading it. So that's been definitely an amazing advantage that I've found.
So another topic I want to really ask you about is, there are a lot of young people who don't really know what to choose as a major, and what job they should find, and what they're going to be doing in the future. They're so confused about this topic. So because they feel neutral about every field almost. So do you recommend anything for them? Like what should they look for when it comes to choosing a major?
In the school that I went to in the US, we had a couple of classes that were kind of geared towards certain professions. So for example, if anybody wanted to enter medicine, you would take this one class and you would be able to go and visit different professionals in that field, and you would be able to stay with them for maybe a couple of hours throughout the week, and you'd be able to kind of follow them and see what they do and how what the profession is like. And same thing for business. You had people who did business, automotive repair, different professions like that. So if you have something like that in your educational system, that could be a possibility. If your schools or universities don't offer anything like this, I would recommend just even volunteering or interning at certain organizations or certain professions that you are interested in. So for example, if someone's interested in medicine, then going and volunteering in a hospital, trying to shadow a doctor or nurses, and trying to see if that's something they could see themselves doing in their lives. So it's very important for people to kind of get an experience of what they want to do. And you have a general inclination of what you want to do. I mean, do you want to be dealing more with people? Do you want to be in education? Do you find happiness? It's just what you find happiness in, what do you feel fulfillment in. It's important not to just look at your career as a way of income, but also how are you giving back to the ummah?
Yeah.
How are you improving yourself through that job? How are you improving your family condition, your society's condition? What does your society need? So it's very important to look at your circumstances, and it can differ from place to place. I mean, some places it might be that there's a dire need for Muslims to become doctors. Some places it might be, no, we need Muslims in media. Some places it might say, no, we actually need Muslims in law. We need people to be able to stand up for the rights of Muslims. We need people to be able to, it just depends where you are, honestly. It's just, so depending on your circumstance and the community you live in, what your passion is, just looking at those different factors and asking mentors and your family members, your people that you trust, I think it's a good way to go, inshallah.
I'm not sure how university is in Turkey, but in the U.S. we always take core courses in the first year, and so what those courses are is you're basically taking
Foundation.
a big variety of different foundational classes. You take a psychology, one history, one math, one English, and so I think this is the university's way of trying to tell you, here, take a taste of each of these and then decide. And so I think it's important to know that if straight out of high school you don't know what you want to be, it's okay. Don't just choose a path, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, I choose this and stick with it if you find out you don't like it. Take that first year, or take those opportunities where you're volunteering in the first year. Really find what you are passionate about. Make it an intention that this year I need to figure it out. I need to concentrate in all my classes to see what do I really like, what do I really not like. And one advice that my father always gave all my siblings and myself was education should be in something that you love, because at the end you'll be getting a job, and perhaps this job will be for the rest of your life. Would you rather every day waking up going to do something that you dislike but you just have to do it, or something that you're passionate about and that you love, and so every day going to work is like fulfillment and happiness, right? And of course nothing's always that rosy and beautiful, but it does make a difference when you're working with and doing something that you love, as opposed to something that you just did because society told you this is the way you should go. Find what's in your heart, take that time, make that decision, and if you have to change your mind, change your mind. Mahad is a perfect example of that. Mahad was doing the medical route for who knows, like 2 or 3 years. While we were married, almost 2 years, he was still pursuing medicine, but his heart wasn't in it. It was just something that society said it was the thing to do as a Muslim Pakistani male, and there's nothing wrong with medicine, but his heart wasn't in it.
Yeah.
And so 2-3 years later, we had a long discussion, and we decided it's time to be brave enough to say, I want to change, and I know what my heart really desires, and I'm going to make that change. It's not 3 years wasted. Even till this day, I still have to ask him medical questions because I know he learned a lot in those 3 years, right? Some issues come up, he knows so much. So 3 years wasted. But the problem is when you decide, oh, I'm too far in that I just can't change, and then you go for the rest of your life unhappy because you're at 20. You know, what big of a deal would it be? Maybe you have some consequences, but at least you found a path that you love. So I would say don't be afraid to find what you love, and if it comes in the middle of something, change what you're doing.
Great. So another question I want to ask is, do you get slumps or do you lose motivation sometimes? Because the path of knowledge is a really long path. You take a lot of time in studying something or trying to learn new stuff. So if you do get slumps, how do you get over this problem?
I don't think we've ever gotten any slums, so next question. I think that's just a normal thing that anybody, regardless of who you are, what you're studying, and that's something very important to understand, that even students who are studying Islamic studies, they will also find themselves in a time where they're saying, man, my Iman is so low, my connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is so low. And people from the outside are thinking, wait a minute, don't you study Islam? Isn't that what you do?
Yes.
Imams, counselors, these individuals that are teachers, they also find themselves with low Iman sometimes. And honestly, it's a normal thing that happens, that our Iman increases and goes down, up one day. And it's part of life, but it's just knowing that when you're in that low, there's a time when you're in that low, but definitely there's going to be a high that comes as well. But it's just trying to work through that low. And for myself, I think one thing that I find myself doing quite often that gives me kind of a boost in my Iman is just when I take time out for myself, getting away from family, getting away from everybody else, just going and exercising. And while I'm exercising, I'll just be listening to Seerah. So I'll be listening to the life of the Prophet ﷺ, and it's like I'm doing something that's good for my body, I'm doing something that's good for my soul, and I'm listening and I'm enjoying. I'm able to listen to the life of the Prophet ﷺ, and I get to see the difficulties that he went through and how he overcame them. And that's one thing that I feel like, just being able to take a step back, take a moment for yourself, and get some enrichment for yourself. May that be through just 5 minutes of the Qur'an, or maybe through reading something about the life of the Prophet ﷺ, his difficulties, his journey in life. That's something that I find that's very useful. Other than that, I would recommend that, especially when you're in a state of low Iman, what do you not want to do? You don't want to go to the Qur'an at that time. You don't want to be praying extra at that time. But it's taking yourself and forcing yourself to do ibadah in a time when you're not even feeling as if your heart's truly connected. But it's like forcing yourself to do it. Like the statement of Qamar that cry when you're reading Qur'an, when you're calling to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if you can't, fake it, pretend to do it, because it'll bring you closer and it'll be an attempt. You'll make that attempt sincerely for the sake of Allah, opposed to saying that, oh, my Iman is weak, oh, who cares, I'll just do more bad things. No, opposed to that, come and make that effort to come back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and He'll reward you for that. The fact that you're even trying to make an effort when you've just committed a sin, or when you've just had this low moment of Iman, that coming back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
I think to answer the question, do you have slumps in Iman? The answer is overwhelmingly yes. And sometimes we feel bad ourselves because we think, well, that shouldn't be happening. Like, how can I be feeling that way? But we should look to the sayings of the Sahaba themselves, who they said that when we were with the Prophet ﷺ, our Iman was so high, and we were on this Iman high. We can parallel that to, when we're listening to a lecture, when we're at an event where we're in this great Islamic environment, we're on an Islamic high. Then they said, but then when we went back to our homes, we got busy with the work and the family and the children, that our Iman felt like it went very low. And so if the Sahaba could feel this way when the Prophet ﷺ was there living in the same time as him, then obviously we will feel that way. So we shouldn't feel bad about it. We should realize and accept that this is the reality, is this human nature, but we need to then work on it. So when we're in a low, we don't get depressed and say, I'm in a low, it's my fault. You say, I'm in a low, okay, let me get myself out of this low. And so for us particularly, what we've done sometimes is, I might say, like, I feel like I just said this to Mahad the other day, like I feel like I've lost my connection with Allah in terms of dua. Like I used to make so much dua before, but now I just feel so busy, and we have a son now, so directly after prayer, I'm tending to him, and I've lost my time for dua. And so we sat and we discussed this, and we, came up with the agreement, okay, when is he not with us? For example, he's not with us at Dhuhr prayer, he's with the babysitter because it's during school time. Okay, after Dhuhr, that will be our dua time. That will be the time where we really take time to make dua and regain that connection with Allah. And subhanAllah, immediately after we made this decision, like about 2 days ago, the next day I made dua, and I came home and I said, Alhamdulillah, I feel like I've got that connection back. So, yes, you may lose or get low in your Iman, but figure it out, like sit down and think throughout your day, what can I do that's different? And number 2 is find someone to confide in that will help you, that will encourage you. Did you make your dua today? Did you pray that sunnah? Like for example, sometimes we agree, okay, we're not gonna miss our, after Dhuhr sunnah, and then we'll keep up with each other. And of course, that in itself goes up and down, up and down. But having someone to keep you on track, to remind you, it's a very good way of basically checking yourself, because sometimes we're not the best at self-discipline, so sometimes you need someone who's going to help you along that way.
So how about when you don't really want to do the work in front of you, like you get a slump and you don't really, maybe it's not about your Iman, or maybe it is about you just don't want to do anything. There are times like that in our lives, so 1 week, or maybe, for some people it's longer, for some people it's shorter, but we have periods sometimes in our lives that we don't really want to do our jobs.
I think the very first thing in all the things we mentioned in terms of like starting an Arabic journey or your Quranic studies journey, or if you're having difficulties, number one thing is taking time out and making dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because realize that there is no power, there is no change, la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, except with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when you admit to yourself and you admit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that there is weakness in me, laziness does overcome me sometimes, I do get angry, upset sometimes, the very first thing is admit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and ask Him that, Ya Allah, I know my weakness. I want you to help me overcome this, Ya Allah. So show me and be able to help me improve. And so it's not just, it's a couple of things that you're making dua, as well as you're surrounding yourself with people that will help you out. So the power of making dua and having good company, it's really, it has a lot of it does a lot of good for the person, that you've asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then besides spiritually asking, then you physically change your environment. Because it could be, for example, that you being in a certain location by yourself, it will end up that, okay, you'll just waste your time, or you'll just lay down, you don't want to do anything.
Amazing.
Versus, if you're with a group of people that are already studying, and you're the one person on Facebook, and everybody else is, studying, they're just going to look at you like, hey, what's going on, get back to work. So it's changing your circumstance, changing your environment. The famous story about the man who killed 99 people, right? The man who kills 99 people, after he asks the worshipper of Allah, can I be forgiven? He says no, and he kills him, and then he ends up going to the scholar. The scholar says, first thing you need to do is get out of this environment. Your environment that you're in, it's causing you to be, just to taint you and to make it even harder for you to get out of this. If you want the maghfirah of Allah, you want the forgiveness of Allah, you want to become a more active person, you want to get rid of your laziness, take yourself out of that environment that's leading you to that. So for example, you can use this same scenario for if you have a group of bad friends or bad influences. Until you remove yourself from that group of bad influences, you're not going to be able to change yourself. you have to take yourself out, be making dua at the same time, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will help you. But if you surround yourself with good people that have similar objectives, if that is, for example, going to the masjid to pray together, or if that is to memorize Qur'an, or if that is to make dua together, or if that is to do your work and just be on task, just getting people and surrounding yourself with good individuals, and that could be through your friends or through local community groups or your local youth groups. It's very important to have a good, strong network around you, inshallah.
I would echo the same thing as Mahad, specifically in terms of changing your environment. Talking personally, like that's one issue that we have ourselves. Sometimes we feel like in the home, like in our home, or some people might think in their dorm room, I just can't get anything done. I can never, I just want to sleep, or I just want to be on my phone. Like in that setting, when you look around you, it's just a setting of relaxation, right? And so this makes me think of the hadith about the person who's angry, right? The Prophet ﷺ said, if you are angry and you're standing up, then sit down. And if you're sitting down, then lay down. So what is the wisdom in that? I mean, I'm just thinking for my own self. I'm not saying this is the tafsir of the hadith, but it means change. A little bit of change may change your mental state, right? Even just standing to sitting, it may help someone who's angry, perhaps. So maybe just moving from your bed to the table in your room may change your mental state. For us specifically, we have to schedule the time that we are going to get out of the house and we're going to go to the library, because in the library is the only place we can learn. Or we're going to go to the computer lab, because the computer lab is the only place we can learn. So for us, it's really about just changing physically to be able to change the mental. And so I think that's my understanding of the wisdom of that hadith. That change your physical, it can change your mental.
Great. So I just wonder, do you have anyone or anything in mind that inspires you? Do you have a role model or something?
Obviously, as all Muslims, we take our first role model in the Prophet ﷺ, and I would say that that's something that maybe as young children we learned about the life of the Prophet ﷺ, but I would say I really recommend listening to detailed seerah lectures, listening to his life and seeing how he lived his life and the difficulties he went through. I would recommend listening to Sheikh Abdul Nasir on Qur'an Institute. He has a podcast, Seerah podcast, as well as Sheikh Yasir Qadi. He has a very nice series as well. I would recommend listening to those because it gives you a very deep look into the life of the Prophet ﷺ. And instead of just giving you like historical facts and dates, it gives you an insight into his emotions, his life, the difficulties faced, the happinesses he went through, the ups and downs, the trials. And when you see the difficulties him and the companions and the early Muslims faced, it gives you a lot of appreciation for what you have in Islam. So from the very first role model, I would say that all Muslims we should have and we should instill into our children and the generations to come is the Prophet of Allah. But in terms of, for example, like when I'm looking into Islamic studies, like the field that I'm in right now, I would look a lot towards contemporary scholars. Because you're looking at people who are the closest to you in terms of time, like they were like alive maybe a couple of years ago. And if you look at the works they've done, like I have one scholar I really love, Sheikh Wahb al-Zuhairi, rahimahullah. So we first were introduced to him because of the fiqh books that we were reading. And then I come to know that he has a tafsir book. And it's not a tafsir book, it's a tafsir collection which is 17 volumes. And it's so incredible to me that he is a scholar. He is such a well-known personality in fiqh and usul fiqh and qawaid fiqhiyya and all these different aspects of fiqh, and he's written so much in comparative fiqh and all these different things. And then at the same time, he's done so much in tafsir. And his tafsir book is one of my favorite ones, Tafsir al-Munir. So it's just very inspiring to see that someone is able to accomplish so much. And you might be struggling with, like very basic aspects of learning fiqh or learning tafsir, but realize that there have been people that have done so much, and they should serve as inspirations to us. That they were either the contemporary to us, there are so many scholars alive now today that you would just look at them and say, subhanAllah, the effect that they have, that the happiness they bring to people. Even like right before I came to the interview, I was in the masjid, and as I was leaving, one of the brothers who knows we do a tafsir class over here, he came up to me and he said, "Oh, aren't you Ustad Noman's student? You do a class on Sundays?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Oh, okay, I just wanted to give you a hug." And I was like, "Okay, this is subhanAllah, this is very, very strange." But it's because he said that, he told me that because of the work that you guys have done and because of the Quranic studies, it's played a large part in my life. And that's kind of the role models that we want, the individuals that have changed people, that have affected their lives. And it doesn't have to be just educational. It could be in terms of economic standing, in terms of the volunteer work they've done. There have been so many great scholars who, for example, like went and clothed and gave homes to individuals and basically took care of orphans. I think his name was Abdullah As-Samit, if I'm not mistaken. Abdurrahman As-Samit, right? I can't remember. These just individuals that, really brought change and brought benefit to places. And that's what the Prophet ﷺ tells us, that the best of people are those who are the most beneficial to people. That being able to benefit other people. That when you see an individual that really is causing change and bringing positivity to a community, that's inspiration regardless of their religion, regardless of their gender, regardless of whatever, but what they're doing is something admirable. So I would say that specifically Rasulullah ﷺ, and then in different aspects, if it's in different fields and you have different individuals that you look up to.
Do you have any role model sister?
When I think of someone who really inspires me, I would have to think of some of the female teachers that we have here in our university. Because prior to this, even though you wouldn't expect it, in the US, the concept of women studying Islam to a very high level is almost non-existent. In my community, for example, I know of maybe only 1 or 2 women who have studied Islam, bachelor's degree or beyond that, and they are the ones who, sometimes they are out there and they are teaching us, but they're very not very well known, and they're not very well utilized in the community. Like, they're amazing sheikhas and teachers, but they're not very well utilized in the community. And so, however, when I came here to Malaysia, I was amazed at the amount of women scholars and the amount of women asatida. So the first class that we took with a female teacher, her name was Ustada Safiya. Not only because her name is the same as mine was I excited, but she had her PhD in Quranic studies. All of a sudden, from not having known any female scholars, very few in our community, to seeing this woman, a PhD graduate from Jordan. Her Arabic was so good, mashallah. Even her English was good. And there she is teaching us in a university, both men and women. She's also a mother, and she takes care of, I think she has 5 children, all the way from 5 years old to university. And so she's playing all these different roles in her life, a mother, a teacher, and a wife. And so she was just an inspiration to me, because I saw her and I said, yes, we can do it. Even though the scholarship among Muslim women is so low, we can do that. We can achieve the level that she has achieved. And without a doubt, Mahad and I, we both agree that she was one of our most favorite teachers. Because, and it didn't matter that she was a woman or not. She was so learned, and she has so much information and knowledge and wisdom about the Qur'an. And she really introduced us to the amazing topic of Ulum al-Qur'an, or the sciences of the Qur'an. Something that I think has kept with us throughout all these 4 years. Even though we're studying Fiqh and Usul and we're so deep into that, so much of what we learned from her class in Ulum al-Qur'an has stuck with us throughout all these years. And so she and the other asatida, the other female professors, have really inspired me to show me, it is attainable. It is something that we can aspire to be. Of course, there's some people in their life, they want to be, stay-at-home mothers. They want to that is like one of their purposes, one of the main purposes in their lives. Like my mother, for example, she said she loved just taking care of the children. That's what she loved, and that's what she wanted to do, her choice, and I'm so grateful for it. Then the other women who want to continue in their career and want to study Islam and teach Islam, we need to know that that is possible, and that there are places where we can go and study, and we can get and obtain a very high level of scholarship, inshallah. Because one thing that this Ustadha taught us is that there is something different about a woman's perspective sometimes. Like having a woman's perspective in learning things is just a little bit different than having a male's perspective. And sometimes female students or just female regular people, they might want to get an opinion from a woman, right? Get an opinion from a woman on this issue because maybe their issue is very, like maybe it's related to menstruation, or maybe it's related to their a relationship issue they have with their mother or with their husband, for example. And maybe they feel shy to go to a male scholar, and the imam of their community. So actually there is a big need, a huge need for female scholars. And so the Ustadha Safiya, I would say, is one of the big inspirations in my life. And I pray she just continues with what she's doing. She's really benefiting this university so much with her classes. And she's, I think, honestly, like left a footprint in the heart of all of us students, both male and female, after taking a class with her.
Great. Okay, I'm wondering if you have been in Turkey before, or do you have any? Do you know anything about Turkey?
So I think the extent of us visiting Turkey has always been just stopovers in our transit, going back to the U.S. or going somewhere else. But regarding actually meeting Turkish people, I think the very first Turkish people I met was that in Houston, in the city that we grew up in, there's a Turkish raindrop center, cultural center. So one of the individuals I would go study Qur'an with, the Imam of the Masjid, Imam Mustafa, and I can never pronounce his last name, Mustafa Yigit, I think.
It's okay.
Yeah, mashallah. So he's a graduate from Azhar, from the Qur'an college, and he was just a very, very nice person. We had spent a lot of time over there. Went to Ramadan in that masjid, and we would kind of see the Turkish culture and the different food they would have. But we've never actually spent time in Turkey, but I think it's something we'd love to do, and come check out Turkey. Be able to do some programs over there, inshallah.
And I actually, prior to coming to this university and studying Fiqh, I completed my first degree in Houston, in Texas, in America, in journalism at my university there. But my minor was religious studies, and one of my favorite teachers, actually, he was a Muslim Turkish man, and I really loved his class because he was teaching about I guess a comparison or similarities between the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, the Qur'an, and Isa ﷺ and the Bible. So it was a really interesting class, and I was just amazed at his scholarship, this Turkish teacher. And obviously what was more amazing is I'm a Muslim in the class, but I'm in America, so the rest of the students are all American, mostly Christian, and he really inspired them to really learn a lot about Islam. So I really enjoyed being in his class. In addition to that, we've met many, mashallah, amazing Turkish exchange students at this university, like yourself. One thing about them is they're always very polite, very nice people. You never hear them like yelling or screaming or saying anything rude. They're always very, very polite people. Always, and also doing very well in the class, mashallah. Like they're speaking
they're
out.
Not shy, yeah.
They're not shy to speak. They're speaking and they're asking questions. And it's very interesting to see their perspective of Islam, because we know that, of course, in your country there's some people just imagine, oh, Turkey is a Muslim country. It is, but you guys have, secular
different
Turkish
kinds
people, more geared toward Islam. So you, in and of yourself, I think you guys have a similar sort of dynamic that maybe we have in America, Muslims, and then dealing with non-Muslims. You have Turkish Muslims and then dealing with maybe people who are pushing against Islam. So I think we have very, some similarities whenever I talk to the foreign students, and so it's really nice to get that perspective.
MashaAllah. Great to hear that. Okay. So, Jazakumullah khairan for taking your time, spending your time to sit and talk with us. It was so amazing and inspirational. Alhamdulillah. We benefit from you a lot. So thank you so much.
Well, yeah, thank you for the invitation.